What is the current philosophy of drawing extra cards?
I'll take that one. When a player ends up with a card extra card in his hand, and the situation immediately before this happening was not a game rule violation situation, we call that drawing extra cards. Real simple way to think of it actually is, if we believe a card draw problem has happened, remove the card draw. You know, take that event and just move it aside. If there's something else, if there's a game rule violation happening at that time, we categorize that as a game rule violation. Otherwise, it's a drawing extra card situation.
And what is the current, are there any exceptions for the penalty?
Drawing extra cards is a game loss. Now, there are times, and I want to stress, there are times when the head judge has the option to downgrade. If there are no other cards in hand, then it's easily enough identified that you have the option to downgrade.
Let's say there's been a howling mine on the battlefield. The howling mine is destroyed, but then on the next turn, the player, still thinking about the howling mine, draws an extra card in his upkeep by mistake.
I'll take this one. In this case, you look at the game state immediately before the player drew the extra card. In this case, there wasn't any part of the game telling them to draw an extra card. There wasn't any game rule violation or anything like that. And so that example would fall under drawing extra cards.
Okay, second example, the active player casts Preordain. He scries for 2, puts one card in the bottom, puts the other card in his hand, and then thinking it's resolved, then draws a card.
In this case, what the player has done essentially is shortcutted through the preordained step of scrying and drawing, but then mistakenly drew another card. Since he's essentially resolved preordained correctly with the shortcut, the second card draw has no game rule violation associated with it. As a result, that second card draw would be drawing extra cards.
So the player has a grizzly bear on the battlefield. His opponent targets it with a lightning bolt. The lightning bolt resolves, but the player mistakenly puts the card back into his hand instead of into the graveyard.
So what we've netted here is we have this player having an additional card in his hand that he's not supposed to have. And there's, once again, we take out the card draw, we look at the situation before, there is no GRV here. This is a drawing extra card situation.
Go ahead.
So the active player tries to evoke his Muldrifter, but uses red mana instead of blue, and draws extra cards.
Alright, so in this case, we have the evoked Muldrifter causing the player to correctly draw 2 cards, but the mistake...
He's correctly resolving that trigger.
Correctly resolving that trigger, exactly.
Yeah.
But the problem is, just before that card draw happened, there was a game rule violation. Namely, the player paid the evoke cost of the Muldrifter with the wrong mana. So in this case, it is a game rule violation, and you use the infraction and the penalty and the fix based on a game rule violation rather than drawing extra cards.
Last one, the active player is taking a bit of time and doesn't seem to be doing anything. His opponent asks if it's his turn yet. He says no, but the opponent thinks he says go and draws a card for his turn. What would this be?
This one falls well within the camp, in my opinion, of player communication violation. Your thoughts?
Yeah, in this case, what's the real problem here is that the players have a miscommunication over whose turn it is. If there is, you know, of course, assuming there's no intent to mislead or anything like that, if the two players are just being unclear, and one says no, meaning it's still my turn, and the other thinks he says go, meaning, you know, it's my turn now, and draws, it is not drawing extra cards in this case, because just before the card draw happened, there was a player communication violation.
Yeah, he has unclearly stated something about the game that he's required. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. John Oliver, Jeff Morrow, thank you very much.
Our pleasure, James Elliott.